Here with an episode of Chordplay, and this is the Chords of Opeth. And Opeth is a Swedish death metal band that formed in 1989, and over the years, they changed from a Swedish death metal band into more of a progressive metal band. And then about 10 years ago or so, they made the full shift into just progressive rock. And I've been following Opeth for a long time, and Mikael Åkerfeldt, the vocalist and kind of the driving force behind the group. They've seen member changes and stylistic changes. But Michael's very prolific. He's got a great voice, great approach to guitar. He also plays piano. He's a producer. I think he plays bass. He's a very talented human being for sure. Very interesting too. Very eclectic, and he has this kind of romantic heart in a way where he borrows musical ideas from classical and jazz, and of course metal and rock. But then folk, and you'll hear all these different things hiding in Opeth's music. I did create like the mellow side of Opeth in a Chordplay episode. That was really early on this channel. That was like last spring or early summer last year. And that was kind of more their acoustic textures, and there were a lot of examples from Damnation, which is kind of their first, mellow album with clean vocals and predominantly acoustic and clean guitars. But this is more or less going to be more of their heavy stuff and distorted rhythms, and there's some really interesting chords throughout this whole lesson. And I kind of took the time to make sure I had the right voicings, and I was kind of hand picking, certain songs. So we're going to go, back quite a ways, and then there is an example from their new album that I'm going to share on this too. So if you're a fan, definitely, watch this whole video, because, we're going to hit some classics, we're going to hit some more recent things. But I know a lot of people watching this, if you're an original Opeth fan, Peter Lindgren was the original guitarist, and, he was definitely logged a lot of years with the group and tours and albums, and, a big contributor to their music. And then when Peter left, he was replaced by Fredrik Åkesson, and Fredrik's kind of their stunt guitarist these days, because I noticed when Peter was in the band, Mikael and Peter would kind of share solos, and Mikael still does play, solos and melodies and stuff like that, but it does seem like Fredrik's kind of become their stunt guitarist, and he steps up and solos a lot, and he's a great player for sure. The opening, that was the song Ghost of Perdition, which I think is my favorite Opeth song. It's from Ghost Reveilles, and there's a lot of interesting chords, happen in this tune. In the intro, it kind of starts with this like delayed, kind of clean and quiet, chord section. And those chords, and we are in drop D, by the way. This example's in drop D, the next example's in drop D, and then everything after that's in standard. So I didn't really give the tuning warning, even though there are two different tunings in this lesson. Drop D on this example and the next one, and like I said, everything after that's standard. But so we're in drop D, and he starts with this D minor chord like this. And I'm just kind of strumming that twice to mimic, the delay, because he really just strummed it once, and then the delay, you kind of hear that repeat. But that D minor is going to move to a D minor major 7 right here. And then back to D minor again like this. And then you're going to play a D minor add 9. And then back to that D minor major 7. So a really interesting, series of chords, and the song, is just starting. It hasn't even opened up yet. And then the next riff you hear is when it gets heavy and it kicks in. So that starts with that D minor. I'm going to turn the distortion down just a little bit so we can really hear, some of those chords. But it's going to start with that D minor. And then you're basically going to that D minor major 7 there too. And we're in drop D, so there's some one-fingered power chords coming down there. And that's a weird riff, but it's really cool the way it kind of plays with the time too. And then this is weird because he's grabbing the 4th fret there and hitting, the open D. And it just kind of, lets that ring into it, lets the notes kind of ring into each other. And then you're going to basically hit this. So that's kind of like a B octave to a B flat octave, to a D power chord. But technically there are some chords, kind of hiding in there. That's almost like a B minor over D, and then B flat over D to D5. Really interesting. And then you've got this little thing. Then you're going to repeat that whole thing again. And the second time, just grab this G power chord here, one finger down to that F, and then basically F to E flat to D. Really cool riff though. The next example comes from the song Demon of the Fall, which is from the My Arms, Your Hearse album. So we're going way back, like early in their career. We're still in drop D, and you're going to see we're going to kind of manipulate this D octave. And then we're also going to change, the root notes in drop D. And that's going to kind of create these different textures and sounds. So it looks and sounds like this. See, we're basically doing that D octave, and then he's going to change the root note, and there's an A right there on the 7th fret, in drop D tuning. So that's kind of like a D over A now. And then he's going to move that down to an A flat, so that's the flat 5 in D. So he's going for that real demonic, the flat 5. But he's doing it down there, which is really cool. And then with the single note action, he's basically dipping into D, half whole diminished, like the diminished scale. And that's what that stuff is. Together and you got this wicked riff. next example is from the Drapery Falls, which is from Blackwater Park, and that's one of my favorite, Opeth albums. Very well received, and I think that was one of the albums that kind of popped up. And when I heard it, I was like, wait a minute, this is that Swedish death metal band? And then I kind of dove in a little bit deeper, and really interesting. And I love, it kind of starts with an acoustic, and then you hear the electric guitars come in, and you have this massive sound, and we're playing all these minor add 9 chords with distortion, which really kind of adds to the intensity, and it kind of gives this eerie, feeling, or an eerie sound. But really cool, and there's some cool chords kind of hiding in here too, but it looks like this. There we've got the C minor add 9 right there. And they're kind of separating the chord. They're playing the lower, strings first, and then they kind of strum some of the higher strings. So they're almost kind of splitting that chord in half, as far as the way it's performed. And then you're going to hear it go down to a B flat minor add 9. This is really clever. So you're going to keep the bar right there, and then you're going to grab this. And that's basically a B6. And then you're going to lift this 8th fret on the G up, and that's going to turn into a B6-9. So I love that transition from here to here. And then you hear it go down to a B flat power chord. And then you hear the root note change to G flat. Now that's a G flat major 7. And then an F sus4 with that F root note. And then you hear it temporarily move to a C power chord. And then it goes right back into that C minor add 9, like this. Really cool riff, and I love those chords. So cool. Right up next we have the song Continuum, which is from their new album Incauda Venenum, and I can't wait to see them play this live next week in concert. And I know when I bought the new album and I listened to it, this was the track that just jumped out, and it is my favorite song on their new album. And the new album's great. I mean, I really enjoy it. And there's something about the way they put this part together. I guess it's like the chorus, and the song just kind of opens up, and it's got this big, powerful chord section like this. Right there you can see we start with this E power chord, and then you're basically playing an E over G right there, and then A major, but you're doing it like that, which is really interesting. And then he does this little single note line, and then you're going to basically strum that E, and then it's an E over G sharp, so he kind of flipped it from G to G sharp. Go back to that A, and he starts doing like this little A, A sus2, A sus4 thing, and then he starts doing, so he kind of added like a little single note riff to the chords. And go right back to A, and then you're going to repeat that riff, just add that little single note riff to the mix, and you got it. last example's from the song The Moor, which is from Still Life, and we're going back, back in time once again. And I've actually had a lot of requests from students over the years that were Opeth fans about this song. And then I also did a little bit of researching just to see what was available online. And there are transcriptions of this song that pop up, on the internet, but they are horribly wrong. Horribly. I was so shocked to see the chords were nowhere near the right, voicings. And, when I saw that, I thought, oh my gosh. And I couldn't find an accurate transcription of this one anywhere. And then I saw like message boards and comment sections, and people were like begging for this song. So this is really, really, advanced. This is definitely kind of dipping into, some avant-garde classical and avant-garde jazz or fusion, tonalities. So this isn't power chords and, major and minor chords. This is really complicated as far as the voicings and the progression. So it kind of like fades in, and you'll hear this guitar part in combination with Peter kind of like volume swelling this little melody. And it just kind of grows and gets a little bit louder and a little bit louder. And then the next thing you know, the song actually begins. But this is really, really cool. It looks like this. There's some weird chords happening right there. And right off the bat, there's a G flat 6 flat 9, which that is very bizarro. That's like a whole nother, universe or something right there. And then F minor. And then right there, you're basically gonna hit a D flat 7 flat 5. So we have this, and then this, and then go back to that F minor, D major 7, and then an F6 up to an A flat 6. And then this is really weird. This would be an E augmented add 9. And then he basically grabs this double stop and hammers on to D. And then he adds this A flat right there. So that's kind of augmented, implied as far as that last chord. So you've got this. And then you repeat it. And I believe he's actually finger picking that. He's kind of plucking, the strings and not using a pick. And that's kind of the secret, to getting, the root notes and the bass notes of those chords, and then the separation of the notes, because it really wouldn't sound right if you tried to pick or strum through that. Really odd chord progression, but I love that. It sounds so modern and futuristic and unusual. You don't hear other songs that sound like that. That's like completely, Opeth. That's going to wrap this look at the Chords of Opeth, and I'm definitely a fan. It should be really obvious. I've been talking about the group and mentioned, that I'm going to see them next week in concert, and just a really exciting band. And groups like this, they kind of hit or trigger, some of my musical, kind of just the things that I get excited. Like when I hear certain chords and certain melodies and tonalities, and you start hearing some of these, advanced textures and sounds, it just thrills me, where I can't get it loud enough and I can't listen to it enough, where it's like, yes, give me more of this. And I think the big reason why I really like this group and groups like this is it's not traditional. They're not writing normal, love songs and, 3 or 4 chord songs or whatever. It's like, no, they're pushing music forward. They're pushing the envelope into a new direction. And they've grown. They started as a, full-on death metal band. And then now they've kind of, blurred and grown into a prog rock band, which I think is awesome, to see that kind of growth and development and just the changes, over the years. So I can listen to the early stuff. I can go all the way back to Orchid, and then I can kind of dance around through their music, and I can get into their most recent album, So I'm a fan of it all. I think they're marvelous, and I think they're really interesting and kind of unusual and different, but that's why I like it, because it's not the same old thing. And, you know, no offense to the same old thing, but the same old thing's boring. I like to hear something new and fresh and, you know, different. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content material. Thank you.